I have a large collection of arcade games. I wonder how much money it would cost me to complete all of them if it was a real arcade. Only one way to find out. It's the month of Halloween, where dentists and cheap costumes rake in a fortune. And to celebrate, every video this month has been horror themed. Truth be told, I forgot Halloween was coming up, so it's more of a last minute arrangement of videos, but that's going to be our secret. And what's more horror related than Kung Fu? Don't believe me? Well, I can prove it. Have you ever watched a horror movie and just yelled at the characters to just punch it? Well, Data East took that advice to heart and made a kick-ass beat-em-up called Night Slashers. You and a friend battle against the ever-growing army of the undead along with other supernatural horrors, using stylish moves and over-the-top super attacks, exactly how the zombie apocalypse should play out. The bare minimum plot takes place as the apocalypse is happening. Each of the characters introduced one by one for a cutscene as they save a family from being eaten. First up is Jake, an American monster hunter, also known as the Psychic Cyborg. Each character also has a move exhibition while demonstrating the 3-button controls to you, which is rigged because the hit detection has been turned off. One button attacks and the second jumps. Pushing them at the same time does a super move that drains life, and the third button performs an ultimate move that can be performed on the ground or in the air. Healing items and weapons can also be found in briefcases or dropped from enemies. The briefcases or items are picked up with punch and used or eaten with the punch button. Outside, beating up a werewolf, we meet Christopher, Europe's most well-known vampire hunter, and finally, bringing the thunder, is Hong Hua, Asia's most revered black magic martial artist. Other moves that the intro doesn't show you are the jump attack, the dash attack, and some double team moves. Grapple attacks are also present, with Jake having the best one. Each of the characters has their own strengths, flaws, and moveset. No doubt you can tell what playstyle the characters are just by watching them and looking at their designs. Jake being the strongest, Hua being the fastest, and Christopher being balanced. After you choose your fighter, it's time to make an entrance. Mission 1 has the simple objective of clearing out a hospital. From the very first hit you land on a zombie, it feels satisfying. The impact sounds forceful, gory visuals illustrate your strength, and the musical score gives off a zombie-slaying, fun-time B-movie Saturday morning cartoon kind of feel. It fits the tone perfectly, and it's funny to watch the zombies rock back and forth like a grotesque punching bag. The first level is quite animated in terms of its design. Enemies don't just walk in from off screen like your typical beat 'em up, they can also emerge from the environment in several ways. One of the highlights of this level is when the zombies climb out of body bags to eat you. Levels are also fairly short too. After about maybe 2 minutes of fighting, you encounter a mini-boss right before the main boss. You exchange some banter with the Mad Doctor and the fight begins. As you can imagine, he attacks differently and is stronger than the regular enemies. He's quite quick and spends a lot of his time jumping away from you, but he isn't that much more difficult than the enemies, he's just irritating. However, this is one of those fighting games that lets you grapple the boss characters and perform all your movesets on them. So if a boss is pissing you off, you can fight with your full capabilities, resulting in some nice visuals of you beating the shit out of them. After you take care of him, you move on to the real boss of the first level, Frankenstein, the ex-wrestler. You'll start to notice a common behaviour among the bosses. Increased attack speed and sometimes spamming of the same attack. But the bosses don't have a recovery period after an attack, by which I mean they don't pause to move away from the player or have a moment of vulnerability for the player to take advantage. Instead, they will be instantly able to attack again, meaning they will have many cheap shots that can result in death of the player. And with Frankie's grappling and knockdown moveset, it can be a real problem. Like here where he performs 3 attacks without stopping. See how cheap that is? Granted I only got hit by 1, but if the second player was there, how was that fair? On the flip side though, it's possible to interrupt some of the boss's attacks like they can to you. Whether this is luck or not, I'm not sure, but I'm thankful that it could be done. This also was the first time me and Aku were able to pull off a double team move. If one player grapples an enemy, the second can also grapple that same enemy, but when someone presses a button, it does take some cooperation to pull off, but when you do, it's one hell of a damaging move. Once you put the final free count on Frankie, the level is finished and we get more plot. A vampire taunts you and challenges you to come and fight him in his castle. Naturally, being the 100% paragons we are, we chase after him. Stage 2 takes place in the woods. After a short fight with some zombies, we see the vampire fleeing in a stagecoach, and we give chase. Literally. We have a chase scene, which is kinda cool, but only kind of because it's short. The controls stay pretty much the same, except all your attacks are now a charging attack. The controls in general are responsive and accurate, which is good in a game as crowded and as quick as this. It's not really a problem in the first level, but later on you can find yourselves overwhelmed with enemies or in cramped situations and you'll be greatly appreciative of being able to attack in multiple directions and throwing enemies into others reliably. Plus the hit detection is balanced into the player's favour, and it's very accurate. Though there are times where you can't hit the enemy because of the iframes, but it's still expertly done. When a coach does stop, it turns out it was a trick, and you have to fight a crazy hunchback and his living doll. Similar to the last mini-boss, the hunchback likes to jump around and attack quickly while his Goosebumps doll shambles around a lot slower, spamming flying headbutts. Both, however, weak as shit, especially after Jack tried to straighten out the hunchback. Continuing the same level, the fight continues into a graveyard. The big boss of this level is pretty cool because it's a type of monster not often used in supernatural themed games. A golem! He looks pretty cool too. In fact, the look of the game in general is pretty cool. The backgrounds are crisp and easy to navigate around. The animations of the characters is really smooth and the visual effects on the super attacks make them feel satisfyingly powerful. What makes this game stand out is just the amount of animations included to give the game more life. Pun intended. Is that sort of a pun? I'm not sure. Enemies recoil and catch their balance when you hit them. Limbs bounce when they hit the floor, and there are contextual death animations and even little details like dust clouds and containers breaking have been crafted with such attention to detail. The graphics are the biggest selling point of this game, and they have such a high level of quality that every action you do feels impactful and deadly. The Golem is actually easier than Frankie. His attacks are limited to a boomerang arm and summoning allies and an ever so gracious swan dive. His attacks only reach in front of him, so he's easy to avoid if you walk in a zigzag. He tanks just as much damage as Frank, but a few DDTs and body slams later, he crumbles under the pressure. On the subject of difficulty, the game is designed in a way where both player and enemy alike are on a level playing field, by which I mean each team, if you will, has its own pros and cons to keep the game fair, which is, again, unusual for an arcade game. Enemies die quickly but outnumber you. You are more powerful than the enemy, but a super attack will drain your health to varying degrees, so the monsters can still pose a threat to you. This kind of mechanic encourages skill-based gameplay from the player, which means when players win or lose will be based on their own abilities instead of bullshit like attacks from undodgeable boss moves, off-screen attacks, and so on. Granted, there's still some cheap shit in the game, but it rarely makes an appearance. Time for a quick break with a game of Whack-A-Zombie, brought to you by Hungry Burgers and Drug Zombie. Aim of the game is simple: stomp or kick the face of zombies who haven't sprouted properly. Get the most kills, and you win. Your prize? Superiority over the other co-op player. In reality, there is no prize, it's just points going towards another extra life. But it's a nice little game to play. Then it's on to stage 3, approaching the castle. New enemies are starting to show and the variety has become more mixed. Having said that though, the enemy types are very few, and by the time you finish stage 3, you see most of the regular enemies. You of course have your zombies that are the game's foot soldier cannon fodder, zombie commandos that can come in 3 types, each having their own attacks. The worst being this twat that traps you in a pain loop because your character can't get away from his attack because it's so fucking extended! The werewolves, who are quite weak but fast and an obvious homage to Teen Wolf. Then when you reach stage 3, the fat zombies, who are incredibly athletic, start to appear. Fire spirits, and the tall muscle heads that swing axes at you. Other than a few variations in attack animations and visual appearance, the enemies don't really have anything that makes them stand out. They take roughly the same amount of damage, and your fighting tactics don't really have to change much to beat them. Just keep punching them till they drop dead, which can make the combat feel a little stale, but at the same time, smashing your way through hordes of enemies does make you feel powerful, so it's a gift and a curse really. As you progress through the level, you will reach another cool segment where you need to defend yourself on a lift as it ascends to the first boss. Sadly not as cool as other lift segments in other games, as you can't knock the enemies off, but at least it's easier to do double team moves here. When you get to the first boss, it's another unique monster, a haunted sword that has control of a suit of armour. Unlike regular enemies though, bosses do stand out and have more of a challenge. They sometimes can be too weak, and a lot of the time the fights are over before you know it. But they are still fun to fight, and having two bosses, plus the segments that change the pace of the game, plus the mini games, really helps in making the regular fighting areas feel less of a slog. After defeating the knight, we fought some killer artwork, and then I accidentally discovered a new attack. Holding in the punch button causes a blue circle to form around you, going from Finn, to Blue Ring of Fire, to Johnny Cash Ring of Fire. Holding it down for too long causes you to stun yourself, but releasing the button after at least the blue fire ring has formed unleashes a powered up attack. Fancy as it looks, there isn't much use for it apart from maybe a powered up first hit, and your standard combo is more effective in the long run. Unless you're playing as Jake, because then you can do this. Once you make it to the rooftop, you fight a couple more goons, and then it's time to fight the vampire himself. Pro tip, knee him in the dick. Unfortunately, Vlad the Edgelord is just as lackluster as the other bosses. He has a grapple attack which can be countered with a swift drop kick to the face, a backhand swipe, and he can make it rain vampire underlings. So far he's had the biggest health bar of any boss we've encountered, but it still goes down pretty quick. Technically you don't even get the kill. When his life runs out he turns to stone before the sun rises, don't know how that works, and then the sun finishes him off. With Vlad Cullen destroyed, it's the end of the game, right? Wrong! Turns out that while the Ringmaster of the Apocalypse may be dead, the portals letting his nightmare army into the world are still open, so now it's up to us to close them. Where are these portals, you ask? Well, if you guessed in this castle, you're wrong. It's obviously in an Aztec temple. What are you, stupid? Welcome to the shortest stage in the game. I can literally summarise this level in under 10 seconds. Ready? Go! Start the level, punch bad guys, throw a few pillars around and beat up the Predator's Aztec cousins, job done. Seriously, we beat this level in under 3 minutes. This was supposed to be us closing a portal. What portal? That's a portal? Are you sure they're not using it as a trapdoor? In massively stark contrast, the final 3 levels of the game play out more like a modern horror rather than the gothic setting we've been given at the start of the game. Because now, we're boarding a cargo plane, which we then use to hijack a helicopter. Did you see that coming? We've gone from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein levels of horror to Resident Evil 6 levels of horror in an instant. This is where the game gets a little weak for me. The game starts to lose the appeal it had at the start of the game and starts to look and feel more generic. There's 3 levels left, but because of the shift in tone, I can summarise them all to be the same way. After you hijacked an helicopter, you fly it to an island where the next portal should be. Except, you don't ever see a portal the entire time you're there. As you can expect, every enemy you've encountered so far is swarming you across the home stretch. They even pulled the gaming sin of recycling bosses with a palette swap. You do, however, get to fight 2 new bosses, a mummy and the Grim Reaper himself, and, you guessed it, same flaws as the other bosses. During your run, you will get to play a game of zombie bowling to break the tension, and then back to fighting. But this time, you're in a secret science base. And then you're back to fighting in the secret science base, until you reach the final boss, a death metal album cover. Being the final boss, you can expect him to be pulling a few cheap tricks. And he does. He has his own Ring of Fire, but with no animation to choreograph it, he can turn it on in an instant, even if he's being spammed with attacks. And he's also got the other things like interrupting your attacks and just ignoring hits when he wants to. Other than that, he is just as underpowered as the other bosses. His other attacks are a grapple, a straight jab, and a flamethrower whip. But you can defeat him easily with Jake's powered up clotheslines and 360 pile drivers. Once you defeat him, all that's left to do is one final running segment. But oh no! Robo Demon is still alive! This section is really just to try and get some extra money out of you. You need to hit him enough to destroy him again, but the hit detection is obviously off. So there are times where you could swear blind you hit him, but you're not sure because he doesn't have any react animation, and other times he'll run into your attacks but remain unaffected. It's a short but dickish segment, but if you manage to land the final blow, victory is yours. The base blows up and any remaining undead are destroyed. Wait, hang on, have they been squatting there this whole time? Bear in mind it's been at least a day in game. If you were too stupid to run to safety, you deserve to die. And how the hell have they not figured out how to get past a single row of barbed wire? This would have been a slow as fuck apocalypse because both sides are just as stupid as the under the nose community. The team then say their goodbyes and player 1's character gets an ending sequence as the credits roll. Night Slashers is a good game and I highly recommend you give it a try. It's true the bosses can feel lackluster and it loses some of its initial appeal at the halfway point, but from start to finish it's a fast action-packed game. Its difficulty is fair, and overall the game is a fine-tuned creation in terms of mechanical and visual quality. This game might be a one and done for you if you play it, but it'll be one hell of an experience if you do. Its niche of fighting undead monsters with your bare fists is cheesy, but it's well done here and it offers a great amount of amusement. And this is definitely something I would love to see a sequel to, if not a HD remaster. And that was Night Slashers. Thanks for watching everyone. Join me next time where we play a yellow skin family trying to save their daughter from the worst bank heist in the world.